Marked by a tyrant after transmigrating. Chapter 07. Yeshu was now living and dining with Jin Wang, so he naturally used the emperor's bath. The white jade bath was half the size of a room. It was filled with hot spring water from the mountains and steam filled the room. Yeshu stepped into the warm steam, but the eunuch who brought him here was in no hurry to leave. "What's wrong?" The eunuch brought out a tray from somewhere. On the tray was a freshly opened cream that still had the faint scent of roses. The eunuch said, "This servant will help you bathe." Yeshu glanced at the cream and his vision darkened. "No need, get out." But His Majesty ordered. Yeshu sneered. "Try touching me." The eunuch paused. When working in the palace, the most important thing was to know how to read people's expressions and judge the situation. Although the youth in front of him had lost his power, he was once the prime minister of the country with unlimited power. His methods could not be underestimated. This person had committed a serious crime, but not only did His Majesty not sentence him to death, he even secretly replaced him with someone else. This showed how important he was to His Majesty. This kind of person could not be provoked. The eunuch thought about the pros and cons. Then, he put down the tray, bowed to Yeshu, and left. The doors closed, leaving only Yeshu in the room. Dog Emperor. Idiot Emperor. Yeshu was angry and annoyed. He hated that he was now under someone else's control and had nowhere to run. If he had known that this day would come, he would have been preferred to be tortured to death by the aphrodisiac in the forest. He would not have asked for help. How could he pounce on anyone he saw? He had no self-control at all. Yeshu cursed both Jin Wang and himself as he finished bathing in a huff. The box of cream was still beside the bath. To use it or not to use it? Yeshu could not make up his mind. That dog of an emperor said that he would serve him in bed tonight. It was impossible that he was just saying it. There was no need to think more on it. He would be the one to end up suffering. But if he were to use it, how was he supposed to use it? The steam from the bath made Yeshu's face turn red. He gritted his teeth and used his fingertips to look behind him. Yeshu had never experienced something like this in his life. The fragrance of the rose melted under his fingers. Yeshu messed around with it a few times, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find the right method. Instead, he ended up making himself feel uncomfortable all over. A moment later, Yeshu quickly cleaned his hands and put the things back in place. About an hour later, Yeshu finally returned to his sleeping quarters. As soon as he entered the inner room, he was embraced by a tall figure from behind. Jin Wang buried his head in the side of his neck and sniffed gently. "Did you do it yourself?" After the young man took the pheromone-suppressing pill, there was no longer a smell of his pheromones leaking in his body. Instead, there was a faint rose fragrance. Sweet and seductive. Yeshu's ears turned red and he turned his head away uncomfortably. "Actually, I could have helped you, but this is also good." Jin Wang pulled Yeshu to the bedside and sat down. He lifted his chin slightly and met Yeshu's gaze. "Let's begin." "Begin, what?" Yeshu's helpless appearance fell into Jin Wang's eyes. He chuckled softly. "You have made a request to this emperor, so you naturally have to show Zhen your sincerity." Yeshu bit his lips, his eyes were slightly red. "I don't know how to." A beauty coming out of the bath was always pleasing to the eye. Moreover, the young man in front of him had an otherworldly temperament that couldn't be compared to ordinary women. His wet hair was scattered behind him, and the side of his face and neck were red from the steam. A meandering trail of water streaked across his neck and disappeared into his collar, causing one's imagination to run wild. No wonder people said that Minister Ye was the #1 beauty in all of Changlu. These words were not false. But Jin Wang was not soft-hearted. He half raised his eyes and said in a gentle tone that left no room for argument, "If you don't know how, then you won't be able to go back." Dog Emperor. Idiot Emperor. Yeshu silently watched Jin Wang, thinking that this dog emperor was truly a pervert. Even showing weakness didn't work. I probably won't be able to get away tonight. Forget it, it's just an act. I'll just treat it as being bitten by a dog. With this thought in mind, Yeshu took half a step forward and placed his hand on Jin Wang's shoulder. I can learn, please give this subject a chance, Your Majesty. Jin Wang didn't reply. Yeshu steeled his heart and lowered his head to kiss him. Jin Wang's lips were thin and firm. This kind of face was usually cold and emotionless. But his lips were very soft and slightly cold, in short, it wasn't annoying. Yeshu had no experience with these things, and this kiss also didn't have any technique. However, both of their breaths became messy in an instant. After a while, just as Yeshu was about to let go of him, Jin Wang forcefully pulled him back. Jin Wang pulled him onto the bed, allowing the young man to fall into his arms. His ink-black hair spread out on the bed. The young man's eyes were like stars. He looked at Jin Wang with the honest gaze that couldn't hide his panic and nervousness. Jin Wang's heart immediately softened. He raised his hand and brushed the young man's loose hair behind his ear. It's all right if you don't know how. This emperor will teach you. The bed curtain swayed and fell. Yeshu buried his head in Jin Wang's arms. He frowned slightly. Did you drink? Unknowingly, the fragrance of wine drifted out from within the muslin curtain. Jin Wang was slightly stunned. He nodded. Yes, I drank a few cups while waiting for you. What kind of wine is this? It smells so good. Yeshu was mesmerized by the smell. He couldn't help but raise his head and move closer to Jin Wang's neck, where the smell was the strongest, and take a deep breath. He didn't know that this action was most seductive to the other man. Jin Wang's eyes darkened. The strong fragrance of wine exploded within the bed curtain. Jin Wang was 2 years older than Yeshu. Furthermore, he was born into the imperial family. He had learned how to control his pheromones a long time ago. However, he didn't need to do so in front of his Omega. More so, when they're in bed. As the scent of wine grew stronger, Yeshu's fingertips trembled slightly. He couldn't help but let out a low moan. Yeshu had taken the pheromone-suppressing pill earlier. No matter how strong the fragrance of Jin Wang's pheromones was, he shouldn't have been affected. There was only one possibility for this reaction. That was, the compatibility between the two of them was extremely high. The instinctive attraction between the two of them broke through the barrier of the medicine, causing him to be unconsciously affected by the scent. However, that was the extent of the effect. After taking the medicine, he would not be tempted nor would he release his own pheromones. Jin Wang lowered his eyes to look at the person in his arms. He suddenly felt a little regretful. He shouldn't have been in such a hurry to give him the medicine. He had seen the young man's appearance when he was tempted by his pheromones. That appearance was 100 times more enticing than it was now. The sound of clothes rustling could be heard from inside the bed curtains. It was Jin Wang taking off Yeshu's outer clothes. The young man's body still had traces from last time. Yeshu's skin was fair and sensitive. A light pinch would leave a red mark. Jin Wang took advantage of him for a while. When he saw that the young man's ears were dyed red, he gently patted his shoulder. Don't wait for me to serve you. You should learn things yourself. The young man was already dazed by the high concentration of the pheromones. He looked at Jin Wang in a daze and noticed that Jin Wang's hand had slid down his forearm to grab his wrist. Jin Wang's voice became low and hoarse. Ashu, be good. Give me your hand. Yeshu blinked. He didn't seem to understand what Jin Wang wanted to do. Don't. Yeshu's rebellious spirit returned. He threw himself into Jin Wang's arms and sniffed him like a puppy. Your body smells really good. Let me smell more. Jin Wang guided him patiently. Be good. I'll give it to you right now. You said it yourself. You can't lie to me. Yeshu finally put his hand on Jin Wang's and whispered, "You're always lying to me." Jin Wang's breathing tightened. He asked in return, "When have I ever lied to you?" "You've always lied to me. Not only have you lied to me, you've also scared me and bullied me. Jin Wang, there's no one more despicable than you." Jin Wang. Ever since he ascended the throne, Jin Wang had never been scolded like this. After interacting with this young man for a few days, he was actually scolded like it was way back before. But Jin Wang couldn't get angry. He had never been able to be ruthless to this person. "You're clearly the one who lied to me." Jin Wang was silent for a long time. Then, he whispered, "Do you still remember what you said 3 years ago? You said that in the future, I would unify the world and become the supreme ruler. You said that all the lands under the heavens belonged to the emperor, and all the people who lived on the shores of the earth were this emperor's subjects. Except for you. You'll never be my subject. You're my friend, my confidant, and my brother." Yeshu remained silent. He lowered his head and slowly leaned into Jin Wang's arms. Jin Wang stroked his hair and whispered, "It's been 3 years. I've always wanted to ask you this, but I never had the chance. What do you want to ask?" Yeshu's voice was so soft that it sounded like he was sleep-talking. "Jin Wang." Jin Wang lowered his head. The young man was resting his head on his shoulder and had already closed his eyes. "Yeshu. Yechienen, are you still pretending?" Yeshu didn't respond. The corners of his eyes and cheeks were flushed red. His entire body was curled up in Jin Wang's arms, and he was even muttering something under his breath. One of his hands was even holding Jin Wang's thing. When Jin Wang moved, Yeshu subconsciously tightened his grip. Jin Wang gasped and said angrily, "Yechienen, what are you doing?" Yeshu still didn't respond. The two of them were in a deadlock for a while. Then, Yeshu's breathing gradually stabilized and he even started snoring. No matter how one looked at it, he looked like he was drunk. Drunk. End chapter. Marked by a tyrant after transmigrating. Chapter 08. Yeshu had a dream. In his dream, it was raining heavily, and he was holding a boy who was smaller and thinner than him. The water that seeped through the roof formed puddles on the ground. Outside the window, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Every time there was a boom, the boy in his arms would tremble. So timid. Yeshu smiled and gently rubbed the boy's cold fingers and cheeks. "Ayuan will be the emperor in the future. There is no emperor in this world who is afraid of thunder." The boy raised his head, revealing a pair of bright eyes. "Can't an emperor be afraid of something?" "Of course not." Yeshu said, "As an emperor, you have to be strong in order to make the country strong and make the people submit to you. Any trace of timidity or fear will become a fatal weakness." The boy stared blankly at Yeshu. A sudden clap of thunder exploded in the sky, and the boy quickly shrank back. Then, "I'll be afraid just this once." The boy grabbed Yeshu's clothes tightly and said in a muffled voice, "This is the last time." Yeshu smiled and hugged the boy tightly. The scene changed, and the clouds broke and the sun shone through. Yeshu leaned on the side of the winding corridor, drowsy from the warm sunlight. "I'm so busy with all the trivial matters of the coronation ceremony, but you're just hiding here and relaxing." The clear voice of a young man sounded. Yeshu narrowed his eyes and saw a figure walking towards him from a distance. The young man was tall and straight. His handsome eyebrows were slightly furrowed, but he was still very good looking. Yeshu grinned. "You're shouting about trivial matters of the coronation ceremony. Be careful not to let those old fogies hear you." The young man didn't answer and slowly walked to Yeshu's side. "I asked you earlier what position you wanted." The young man stood beside Yeshu, his tall figure blocking most of the sunlight. "Have you thought about it?" Yeshu asked, "Is it really all right to ask for anything? An emperor doesn't lie." Yeshu was silent for a long time. No one knew what he was thinking in this silence. After a long time, he slowly said, "The position of the left Prime Minister is vacant. Is your Majesty willing to give it to this subject?" A hint of surprise flashed across the young man's eyes. After a while, the young man smiled and answered, "Of course." Under the bright red palace wall, two young men walked away side by side. "I thought you would ask for a noble title and enjoy life." "Who asked me to have a hard life?" Yeshu hooked his arm around the young man's neck and smiled. "I have to help His Majesty unify the world. You said it yourself. It's a deal." "All right, it's a deal." When Yeshu woke up, the morning sun was still shining. When he opened his eyes, he was met with an extremely handsome face. Jin Wang was still sleeping soundly. His eyelashes drooped down, covering his sharp and narrow eyes. His brows were slightly furrowed, leaving behind a faint trace of the Ayuan in his dream was him. The Emperor of Changlu, surname Jin, given name Wang, courtesy name Ling Yuan. This was the first time Yeshu dreamed of the past event since he transmigrated. His memories of the original's past were very vague. Most of the information he knew came from the novel or fragments of memories. For example, today's dream. It seemed like this tyrant used to be a soft and impish little dumpling. Why did he become more and more like a dog after 3 years as the emperor? "What are you thinking about?" someone asked softly by his ear. Yeshu didn't even think and casually replied, "I'm thinking about why you are such a..." The word dog was about to leave his mouth when Yeshu met Jin Wang's gaze and immediately broke out in a cold sweat. Yeshu laughed dryly. "Good morning, Your Majesty." "Good morning." Jin Wang's voice was low and hoarse, causing Yeshu's ears to tingle. "Beloved Minister, what did you say you were thinking about?" "I was thinking." Yeshu's eyes turned and he quickly thought of an idea. "I was thinking about why Your Majesty is so talented. This subject is shocked and has a whole new level of respect for you." Jin Wang. Yeshu's tone was sincere. "Last night, Your Majesty was so majestic and heroic. This subject has never had such an experience in my life. It was really. You didn't feel anything at all?" Jin Wang was expressionless. "I didn't touch you last night. Don't make anything up." Yeshu. "Ah." He lowered his head and saw that the two of them were dressed neatly and there was nothing ambiguous in their bodies. It didn't look like they had done it. Didn't they agree to let him serve him in bed? To think that he had spent so much time in the bathtub? Was this dog emperor impotent? If Jin Wang knew that he was a thief crying thief in his heart, he would definitely be severely punished. Last night, Jin Wang had been so pleased with himself that he had released too much pheromones. But he had forgotten that the person in front of him was someone who fell asleep after drinking a cup of wine and fainted after smelling his pheromones. Sleeping was one thing but holding his thing to sleep was another. He couldn't pull it out even if he wanted to. This was the first time that the dignified emperor of Changlu was held by someone while sleeping. Moreover, it was held for most of the night. It caused him to be energized for a while and then calm down for a while. He almost couldn't take it anymore. Jin Wang got angry when he thought of this. He snorted and lifted the muslin curtain to get up. Yeshu poked his head out. "Then what about Your Majesty promise?" "Promised?" Jin Wang looked back. "What did Zhen promise you?" "The cats?" "You still have the face to mention the cats." Jin Wang coldly said, "No." "Your Majesty." "No, don't even think about it. How can you be like this?" Yeshu knelt on the bed and said unhappily, "Didn't we agree yesterday that as long as I agreed, you would let me go home? An emperor doesn't go back on his word." "How can you go back on your word? Who was the one who went back on his word?" "I didn't touch you." Jin Wang couldn't be bothered with him. Yeshu got off the bed on his knees and chased after him barefoot on the soft carpet. "Your Majesty, you promised me." I just want to go back and take a look. I won't do anything else. I beg you. Yun. Jin Wang paused in his actions of fastening the toggle and loop buckle. Yeshu took the opportunity to turn around and eagerly helped him dress. Jin Wang looked at him without saying a word. Yeshu dressed him neatly and looked up to meet his gaze. The two looked at each other for a while. Jin Wang suddenly grabbed Yeshu's chin and smiled. This emperor haven't heard you call Zhen that for many years. It seems that you really want to go back. His smile was gentle but dangerous. Yeshu felt his scalp go numb. What was going on? Didn't the original call him that before? Why was this tyrant angry? Why was he so temperamental? Jin Wang had learned martial arts before. He didn't hold back and squeezed Yeshu until he felt pain. Yeshu felt the pain and frowned. Your Majesty. Jin Wang loosened his grip. He used his fingertips to rub the red mark on Yeshu's face. His voice was gentle. Don't be afraid. But I'll go with you. The residence was located in the wealthiest district of the capital. 3 years ago, the emperor had personally supervised its construction and named it Linen Residence. It had a sense of tranquility in the midst of chaos. Minister Ye was very popular. The residence was the place where all the noble families and scholars in the capital came to seek refuge. The entrance was as busy as a marketplace and its reputation was unparalleled. But now, the entrance of the residence was locked with a new seal. The inscribed board with the words "Ye Residence" was cut in half and carelessly thrown in front of the stone steps. It had already turned to dust. Passers-by didn't even dare to look at it for fear of being implicated. Anyone who saw it couldn't help but sigh at the impermanence of the world. Except for Yeshu. Yeshu's heart didn't waver. He even wanted to hurry back to the palace. Jin Wang held him tightly in his arms. His tone was very gentle. My dear minister, where is the cat you mentioned? Yeshu silently moved away but was forcefully pulled back by Jin Wang. He lowered his head and obediently said, It's usually here. Let's wait a little longer. Let's wait. The two of them had changed into civilian clothes. Jin Wang was dressed in black and had a black bone bamboo fan at his waist. He had the charm of a dissolute young master. Yeshu, on the other hand, was dressed in a green robe. He looked gentle and dainty. The back door of the residence led to a narrow alley. Few people passed by it and it was overgrown with weeds. The two of them waited in the alley for a while. Finally, they heard a soft meow. Meow. Yeshu looked in the direction of the sound. A yellow and white cat was squatting in the grass, revealing a pair of watery eyes. Just as he was about to go forward, the cat shrank back in fear. Yeshu thought for a moment and said, Your Majesty, with you here, they won't dare to come out. Can you wait for me outside? Jin Wang didn't answer. He lowered his eyes and looked at him. After a long time, he slowly nodded. All right, I'll wait for you in the carriage. The carriage stopped at the entrance of the alley. Yeshu watched as Jin Wang left and sighed silently. At this moment, the cat suddenly turned and ran into the depths of the alley. Yeshu hurriedly chased after it. Not far from the back door of the residence, there was an abandoned courtyard. Yeshu chased the cat into the courtyard. He saw the cat squatting in the corner of a bush, meowing at him. Yeshu lifted the bush. Inside was a litter of kittens that had just been born. The kittens had just opened their eyes. Their fur was soft and sparse, and they were especially cute. Yeshu found them so adorable that his heart trembled. Just as he was about to reach out and touch them, a strange sound suddenly came from the courtyard. The door of the small house next to Yeshu opened with a creak. A damp and cold aura came from the door. Yeshu looked up and frowned slightly. He only hesitated for a moment, then got up and walked in. The room was densely covered in cobwebs and filled with the smell of decay that had been sealed for a long time. Yeshu had just stepped into the room when he felt a gust of cold wind blow over. The next moment, he felt a chill on his neck. A sharp blade was pressed against his throat. Yeshu's eyelashes trembled slightly, but his voice was steady and calm. You really are here. There's no other way. There are people hunting us everywhere outside. If we don't hide here, there's nowhere else to hide. The voice came close to his ear, and the tall figure of a man appeared in front of him. Yeshu spread out his hands. I didn't betray you. The man behind him laughed in a low voice. Minister Ye, who should have been executed, is here. Do you think I'll believe that? Yeshu was silent. He didn't think that he would be able to come back alive. Who knows what that dog of an emperor is thinking every day? Yeshu said, if I really did it, then the people here today would be the imperial guards. That's reasonable. The grip on Yeshu loosened. He turned around and saw the man slowly putting away the dagger. The man standing behind him was extremely tall and had deep facial features. His eyes were shockingly bright in the darkness, as if he had some foreign bloodline. Yeshu had such a person in his memory. The original owner's assassination plot was planned by cooperating with this person. Mujuking from West Xia. Jin Wang is outside. Let's make this short. Yeshu said. I want to leave Changlu. Unexpectedly, the man didn't ask any more questions. Instead, he nodded. All right, I'll take you with me, but you have to give me something in exchange. Yeshu asked, what do you want? The Emperor of Changlu killed many of my subordinates, causing our many years of hard work to go to waste. The man stared at Yeshu, his eyes dark. I want his life. End chapter. Marked by a tyrant after transmigrating. Chapter 09. Yeshu did not answer for a long time. Mujuking said, Minister Ye, that dog of an emperor has a grudge as deep as the ocean with you. Don't tell me you're still soft-hearted towards him. Yeshu lowered his eyes. Of course, he wasn't soft-hearted. But just like how he didn't want to hurt other people's lives in order to save his own, he didn't want to hurt Jin Wang in order to escape. He could not accept the idea of casually taking someone's life. However, there was no need for him to tell Mujuking about this. Mujuking was a spy from the enemy country, and they were only in a cooperative relationship with the original. They each took what they needed from each other but did not trust each other completely. Why would I be soft-hearted towards that dog emperor? Yeshu said calmly, it's just that, he's heavily guarded. I don't know any martial arts, and now that the situation is hopeless, how can I help you kill him? Young Master Mu, compared to killing people, I can give you far more than you can imagine. He wasn't lying. In the novel, West Xia was destroyed first, and Great Yan surrendered. According to the timeline, Jin Wang started the war within the last 1 or 2 years. Jin Wang was a military genius and was extremely good at deploying troops. However, West Xia just so happened to lack a military advisor who knew how to handle troops. Only Yeshu could take on this responsibility. Yeshu had already thought of this long before he came. But Mujuking said, who said I need you to do it yourself? Yeshu. You have a close relationship with the Emperor of Changlu. I want you to keep him in the capital tonight and think of a way to knock him out. Naturally, I would be the one to kill him. Yeshu. Is there something wrong with the brains of the people in this novel? You don't even want concrete information? Yeshu was unable to break him down. He coughed softly and said, Young Master Mu, why don't we discuss this further? There's no need to discuss this further. Mujuking placed an exquisite jade bottle on the table. Do as I say. As long as the Emperor of Changlu does not return to the palace tonight, I will definitely succeed. A moment later, Yeshu walked out of the alley with a litter of kittens in his arms. A carriage was parked at the entrance of the alley. A black-clothed youth was leaning against the side of the carriage, resting with his eyes closed. Hearing footsteps, he raised his head. Light and shadow passed through the treetops and sprinkled on the side of his face, as if it was plated with a layer of light gold, making his eyebrows look somewhat gentle. Yeshu met his gaze and stopped in his tracks. "Are you done?" Jin Wang asked. Yeshu responded and walked forward. "Look, they're so small." A litter of yellow and white kittens sat with their heads close to each other. The mother cat lay beside them obediently, not making any noise. Jin Wang reached out and patted the head of one of the kittens. "Ah Wang was about this big when you brought him back." Yeshu smiled and casually said, "That's right. Weren't you jealous of him?" It was a cold winter in the 12th lunar month. The original owner of the body had brought back a dying little yellow dog from somewhere. Not only did he fight with them for food, he even insisted on naming it Ah Wang, causing little Jin Wang to be jealous for several days. When Jin Wang heard this, the smile in his eyes faded a little. He turned his head and ordered someone to take the kittens away and send them back to the temporary imperial residence to be cleaned and fed. Yeshu followed him into the carriage. The carriage slowly moved forward. Yeshu asked, "Aren't we going back to the temporary imperial residence? Didn't you say that you were cooped up in the temporary imperial residence for too long and wanted to go out for a stroll?" Jin Wang supported his chin and said leisurely, "It just so happens that today is a day off. Wherever you want to go, this emperor will agree to your request." The capital was rich and the Bian River ran through the city. The previous emperor indulged in pleasure. At the peak of his reign, the capital was filled with brothels, and everywhere was filled with indulgence. This situation only improved after Jin Wang succeeded to the throne. Yeshu had long been curious about the brothels described in the book and wanted to take a look. But he was afraid. So, he didn't dare to mention it. In the end, the two rented a small boat and went boating on the river. When night fell, the glazed river lanterns on both sides of the river lit up. The boat swayed in the water, and the sound of music could be heard from across the water. "That's the Spring River Pavilion, the #1 brothel in the capital." Jin Wang sat by the window and put down his wine cup. "My dear minister, you've already looked that way 17 times tonight. Do you want to go in and take a look?" Yeshu withdrew his gaze. "No, I don't want to." Jin Wang smiled and didn't answer. He raised his hand and took the wine pot. With a light shake, the pot was empty. After what happened last night, Jin Wang refused to let Yeshu touch a single drop of wine. He drank the entire pot himself. Jin Wang's alcohol tolerance was average. After drinking the entire pot, his eyes were no longer as clear as before. But the emperor clearly hadn't enjoyed himself enough tonight. Just as he was about to call for someone to bring the wine, Yeshu hurriedly said, "I'll go." Jin Wang looked at him. Yeshu stood up. "Your Majesty, please wait for a moment. I'll go get it." After saying this, Yeshu didn't wait for Jin Wang to reply and quickly walked out. He left in such a hurry that he didn't notice that Jin Wang's eyes had suddenly turned cold. There was a rare trace of killing intent in them. The wine they drank tonight was all brought from the palace by Jin Wang's servants. It was piled up on a small table in the outer room. There was a screen blocking it, so the young man's movements couldn't be seen clearly. Jin Wang also didn't want to turn around to look. He slowly drank the last mouthful of wine in his cup. The young man returned to the table with the wine jar. "It's already late. Your Majesty shouldn't drink any more after drinking this last jar," Yeshu said as he filled Jin Wang's cup. Ripples appeared on the surface of the wine in the cup, its color clear and transparent. Jin Wang looked down and his expression seemed to soften a little. "All right. After drinking this cup, we'll return to the temporary imperial residence. Sit down and keep me company." Yeshu poured himself a cup of tea. Jin Wang didn't allow him drink, so he had been drinking tea in place of wine to accompany Jin Wang for the entire night. Yeshu raised his cup and was about to drink when Jin Wang suddenly said, "Ah Shu, Do you still remember the last time we drank wine? Yeshu paused. It was 3 years ago. It was also that day when you told me that you wanted to be the Prime Minister. After that, I kept thinking that I should have casually given you a noble title at that time and let you be an idle prince in the capital. It would have been better than your current situation. Jin Wang restrained the trace of mockery in his eyes and said calmly, unfortunately, people's hearts are fickle. Who doesn't want power and wealth, right? Yeshu didn't answer. He really didn't know how to answer. He didn't have any memories of why the original betrayed him, and the novel didn't explain it either. It wasn't just Jin Wang who was confused. He, himself was also very confused. Faced with Jin Wang's questioning, he couldn't even find an excuse. The room was silent. The only sound that could be heard was the intermittent mournful melody drifting in from outside the window. Drink. Jin Wang raised his cup and clinked it against Yeshu's cup. Then he covered his sleeves and raised his head, drinking it in one gulp. Jin Wang seemed to have really drunk too much. He threw the empty cup on the table and stood up with the help of the table, almost falling to the side. Yeshu hurriedly steadied him. The boat docked, and Yeshu helped Jin Wang off the boat. Ah, why is your majesty so drunk? The eunuch waiting by the shore hurriedly came over and helped the two into the carriage. Then he asked, Minister, are we still going back? The capital was quite a distance from the temporary imperial residence. It would take at least 3 hours to drive back. Jin Wang was so drunk that he needed to rest as soon as possible. Sitting in the carriage would only make things worse. But it was even more inappropriate to return to the palace now. Yeshu should have someone find an inn to rest for the night. That way, he could coordinate with Mujuking. But, Yeshu had one arm around Jin Wang. The latter was leaning on his shoulder. His half-closed eyes were filled with drunkenness as he stared deeply at Yeshu. This gaze reminded Yeshu of the scene in his dream last night. The youth curled up in his arms and whispered, I'll be afraid one last time. Yeshu took a deep breath and ordered, send some hangover soup and return to the temporary imperial residence. The night was quiet, and a carriage was slowly moving along the mountain path. The interior of the carriage was spacious. Yeshu helped Jin Wang up and brought the hangover soup to his mouth. Jin Wang frowned and dodged, what is this? Zhen don't want to drink it? Hangover soup. Yeshu said, drink it quickly. You won't feel so bad after drinking it. No. Jin Wang seemed to think for a while. Then he closed his eyes and said, feed me, or else Zhen won't drink it. Yeshu. You might as well stay drunk to death. The jade bottle in his bosom was still sealed. He hadn't drugged Jin Wang at all tonight. In all fairness, this dog emperor had treated him quite well aside from scaring him often. Jin Wang hadn't even tried to take his life, so how could Yeshu harm him to save his own life? Not to mention using such underhanded methods. But, this dog emperor was really useless for him to get so drunk even without being drugged. Yeshu sighed and scooped up a spoonful of hangover soup to feed Jin Wang. The carriage was bumpy and Jin Wang wasn't cooperating. Yeshu tried many times, but he couldn't get a single mouthful in. Don't move around. Yeshu was anxious. He pressed down on Jin Wang's shoulder with one hand, tilted his head back, and drank a mouthful of the hangover soup. The other party's lips were soft and cool. Yeshu pried open Jin Wang's lips and teeth, and the sweet and sour hangover soup slowly entered his mouth. Jin Wang immediately stopped moving. After feeding him a mouthful of soup, an unforeseen event occurred. The neighing of horses suddenly came from outside the carriage. The carriage shook violently and stopped. Protect the emperor. There's an assassin, protect the emperor. Yeshu was startled. He was about to retreat when he was suddenly pulled back. The unforeseen event happened too quickly. Yeshu didn't even have time to react before he was pressed down onto the soft couch in the carriage. His lips were once again covered by someone. Yeshu opened his eyes and met a pair of handsome and vicious eyes. There wasn't the slightest hint of drunkenness in those eyes. Yeshu subconsciously raised his hand to push him away, but Jin Wang tightly grasped his wrist and pressed him against the side of his body. Outside the carriage, there was a cacophony of noises and shouts. Inside the carriage, Jin Wang kissed Yeshu's lips. The faint fragrance of wine spread between their lips. When Jin Wang kissed him, he was so gentle that it didn't seem like his personality at all. He lifted Yeshu's chin with one hand and gently stroked his face with the pad of his finger. Two slightly cool thin lips covered Yeshu's lips. He stroked them carefully, patiently, and meticulously. In a trance, it gave people the illusion that he was treating them like a precious treasure. In a flash, the clamor stopped. Someone's voice came from outside the carriage, "Your Majesty, the criminals have all been captured. Are you all right?" Inside the carriage, Jin Wang finally raised his head and parted his lips. He gazed deeply at Yeshu and said softly, "I'm fine." The curtains of the carriage were lifted. The imperial guards were escorting several black-clothed men to kneel in front of the carriage. Jin Wang walked out with Yeshu in his arms. The youth's lips were bright red and the corners of his eyes were moist. It was obvious what had happened just now. The imperial guards averted their eyes and pretended to be blind. Yeshu buried his head in Jin Wang's arms and carefully looked over. The one kneeling at the front was Mujuking. Why was this brother so impulsive? Mujuking also saw him. His eyes immediately lit up with anger. He understood. He understood everything. Yeshu was in cahoots with the Emperor of Changlu from the start. He pretended to cooperate so that he could catch them all in one fell swoop today. Mujuking's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. However, his mouth was gagged and he couldn't open his mouth. He could only make vague whimpering sounds. Yeshu curled up in Jin Wang's arms and didn't dare to move. When we were capturing the spies from West Xia before, a few escaped after receiving the news in advance. It seems like these are those ones. Jin Wang said indifferently, "Kill them all." Mujuking, woo woo woo. Jin Wang ignored him and walked into the carriage with Yeshu in his arms. Mujuking got even more violent. Woo woo. Woo woo woo. Jin Wang paused and looked back. "Do you have anything else to say?" Yeshu's heart instantly jumped. However, before he could open his mouth, Jin Wang ordered, "Let him speak." The imperial guards pulled down the black cloth covering Mujuking's mouth. Mujuking shouted, "Dog, yeah, how dare you go back on your word?" Then, his second sentence was, "Idiot ruler, I won't regret my death today, but you won't have an easy time either." Mujuking was at death's door and no longer had any scruples. A sinister smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as he coldly threw down an earth-shattering sentence, "This one beside you had been thinking about it day and night. He can't wait to see your Jin family die without a burial ground." Yeshu was stunned. He instantly felt Jin Wang's gaze and half of his body went numb. It's over. End chapter.